you know what else can't bat 1,000? Backup quarterback talk. Because that is something that I feel like might be the most passionate subject, at least on today's show, amongst the chat and amongst the fellas in the room. So we watched the preseason game.
Yeah.
Nate Sudfeld looked like the worst quarterback I've ever seen. I literally watched Nate Sudfeld play and thought that I could get out there and do almost as good of a job.
Nah, for real.
It was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life.
There's no way to spin that. It was terrible.
And I get it. Backups, all that, but still, Nate Sudfeld just did not look the part. We saw Hendon Hooker come in. We saw him look a hell of a lot better than Sudfeld. He made a couple throws, made a couple nice scrambles, but he did leave in concussion protocol. So we don't know when we're going to see him again, although we think it's going to be pretty soon. So the backup quarterback is something that we don't know if the Lions necessarily have a reliable one or not. We certainly don't have a known reliable one because Hendon Hooker has not played an NFL snap. We're kind of going off of potential, at least for this year. So Sean Baligian, I'm curious to ask you, should the Lions consider signing Ryan Tannehill as a backup?
Where's my boy Easy? I know Easy's been banging this a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong.
He has.
Easy, and I'm not arguing with the logic because if you're thinking that way, would he be better than the two options they have right now? Yes. Steve Tannehill might be better as well. You kids look that up. Former South Carolina quarterback. Had a magnificent mullet, by the way. But I have to say this, okay? And Flannel, please don't throw Nick Foles at me. And I know what a geek you are, and I mean that with the tip of the cap. Please don't throw Jeff Hostetler at me, okay? If Jared Goff goes down, the season's over.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
It's over.
I mean,
Period.
practically.
End of show. You are not going to go win a Super Bowl with Ryan Tannehill, Steve Tannehill, Hendon Hooker, or Nate Sudfeld. It's not going to happen, okay? And like I said, let me remind you, I don't want to hear about Nick Foles, and I don't want to hear about Jeff Hostetler. Because has it happened before? Yes. And in particular, the Nick Foles one really blows my mind.
Yes,
you're not going to win. So this is where I go back to what I said in the previous. My brain doesn't work this way. My brain doesn't work with, well, what about catastrophic injuries? If you bring up catastrophic injuries to me, I will tell you that the facts overwhelmingly support my feelings and a lot of other people's feelings out there. Jared Goff goes down. All of our best laid plans, all of I honest to God really believe the Lions are going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. That all goes out the window, doesn't it?
Yes.
If we're talking about the Super Bowl, 100,000%. If we're talking about a couple games in the pinch in the middle of the season, if Jared Goff's down for something, maybe like shorter term injuries, then we might need somebody a little bit more trustworthy who can get you a couple of wins in the middle of the season. But I want to go to you, KG.
Yes, sir.
Ryan Tannehill. Is this an option for the Lions? Should they at least consider it?
I'm good on Ryan Tannehill. Because, I mean, for one, he's a poor man's Jared Goff. I mean, he hasn't really done anything that makes me feel like if he comes in a pinch, he'll be the guy to get us through the storm. And I'm also not a believer that, of course, I feel like they need to sign a guy, but I'm not willing to risk any trade capital. I'm not willing to do anything like that because at this point, anybody you get is not going to be a world beater. And I feel like they do have their number 2 quarterback in-house. I mean, he only has a concussion. He'll be fine. I think you just live and die on what Hendon Hooker can provide you and really see what this kid has because risking capital at this point or overpaying a Ryan Tannehill like you paid Teddy Bridgewater last year, I just don't see that, man. And Ryan Tannehill, at least with Teddy Bridgewater, he came in, he helped the team. Ryan Tannehill has been a guy that has proven that he's not trying to help anybody but himself. He wants a starting job in this league. I don't think he deserves one. I'm good. I'm living and dying on what Hendon Hooker can provide me.
Can I jump in really quickly?
Absolutely.
Tannehill was one of those guys that kind of went like this early in his career.
Mm-hmm.
And then he stayed there.
Yeah.
He really did.
Yeah.
I remember watching him and just going, oh, there's some things I really like about this guy. And if you remember, this is going back about 10 years ago, people were talking him up. People were really talking him up. And then nothing.
Yeah.
Like nothing, And I'm not saying that he's not an NFL quarterback. I hope you know that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
he doesn't do anything for me. I think there's a reason why he's out there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in Hendon Hooker, honestly. I think, like you said, Sean, if Goff, God forbid, knock on wood, goes down for
Multiple
a prolonged
games,
or the majority of the
over,
season,
regardless.
it's over. But if he goes down, with a broken rib or a high ankle sprain and has to miss a couple weeks, I have faith that Hendon Hooker, behind the best offensive line in football, with a top 3 tight end, a top 5 wide receiver, the best duo of running backs, and the best offensive coordinator in football, will be able to go out there and win you a couple games. You look at the guys that have done this in the past, guys in recent years, like Jake Browning, like Cooper Rush, like Ben DiNucci, that are forced into starting roles in fantastic offenses. They go out there and they can win you games. Do I think Hendon Hooker is going to be the second coming of Nick Foles? No, I don't think he'll be able to do that, but I have the confidence that if you need him to win you a game or two, you put him in the Lions starting offense, he will be able to do that.
That's an interesting Cooper Rush one because, nobody even knew who the hell Cooper Rush was. And I'm not saying he was a world beater or anything, but he won some games.
Fantasy darling for about 3 weeks.
That's fair. Jake Browning as well last year. And one of the craziest stats about Jake Browning is the Bengals actually had a better record when he was the starter than when Joe Burrow was the starter. I'm not saying he's better. I'm just saying that he did a pretty damn serviceable job, and he wasn't really a known commodity or anything like that. I'm not saying he was as far unadvanced as Hendon Hooker, although I think even in that you could even make a bit of a comparison. I see something from Steve Lehman in the chat which I really think is interesting, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on it. Tannehill wants to still be number 1. Unfortunately, what players need to understand is that we're chasing a ring, not a bag around here, and this is, I think, the danger of a Ryan Tannehill, because I'm not necessarily completely against it, but here's what I would warn against. Ryan Tannehill thinks he's better than Jared Goff.
Yep.
He's not. Everybody knows that he's not. But Ryan Tannehill has been almost a 10-year starter in the NFL. He's had 6 seasons in which he's thrown for 20 or more touchdown passes. He's been to a Pro Bowl. He led the NFL in passer rating one year. I think Derrick Henry in the backfield had a lot to do with it, but still, Ryan Tannehill has been a pretty good quarterback in this league for a long time. Is he going to accept a backup role? I don't necessarily know about that. I think there's teams in the NFL that might suffer some injuries, that might, I would say, suffer some disbelief in their players to where Ryan Tannehill can maybe swoop in and be a starter somewhere. I don't necessarily think he's coming to Detroit to be a backup or to be a part of the team. I think he's looking for another starting job. And I don't blame him, by the way. It's just, if that's my... I would say, because I'm not 100% sure where I stand on this, that is my warning against. That's my con in all of this, is that Ryan Tannehill wants to be a starting quarterback.
And you have to pay a pretty penny for him. I'm good on that.
Can I go back to Steve's comment for a second? Because I think it's a brilliant comment and something that maybe flew over all of our heads, okay? How many times in the past 10, 15, 20, 25 years have we heard about a guy who's available, who, well, it's not about the bag at this point in time in his life. It's about going and getting the ring, which immediately disqualified the Detroit Lions. Mm-hmm. Whether we want to admit it or not, and like, Steve, thank you. I mean, that light bulb just came on for me. The Lions are now that team.
Yep.
If a guy's looking for a ring, okay, you know what? I'm going to come here for a year. I'm going to give myself a chance to get a ring, show what I can do, and then maybe I can get a long-term contract. Why not come to Detroit? Mm-hmm. And do you know how many times, and I can tell you with 2 different general managers with the Detroit Lions, I've had these conversations, that guy would fit perfectly what we want to do here, but he wants to go to a competitor. He wants to go to a legitimate contender. And frankly, I mean, more often than not, that wasn't us. We know that. We're allowed to talk about those things now without getting butthurt because of the position that we're in. But I think that's a great point, and one that maybe none of us considered is, guess what? The Lions are now that team.
Yeah.
You want to go play for a contender? You want a legitimate shot at a ring? Go to Detroit.
Sure. And
it's crazy.
I know. You're not going to get struck by lightning. It's okay.
Right? I know, right?
But does Ryan Tannehill put any value on being a backup quarterback on a Super Bowl team?
I don't think
I
he
would
does.
probably say no. However, and this is, I don't know if this is necessarily a hot take, but here it goes. And again, knock on wood. I think that God forbid Jared Goff goes down with something that's even 7 or 8 weeks at least. God forbid even worse.
Yeah.
Again, knock on wood. Ryan Tannehill is somebody that can lead you to the playoffs. With this team around him, with the offensive line, with the receivers, with the running backs.
I think so.
And to me, because Ed Catella says in the chat when I was talking about how he doesn't want to be a like a backup, he said, you answered your own question. Well, that's my con. My pro is that this year, if Jared Goff goes down with something catastrophic, knock on wood, that I would trust Ryan Tannehill to get this team to the playoffs more than I would trust Hendon Hooker. Although I believe in Hendon Hooker as a capable quarterback someday, Ryan Tannehill is one of those quarterbacks, you kind of alluded to it earlier. He's better than you think, or he's been better than you think. He was terrible when he played last year, but he's better than you think, and he's also won some playoff games as a starter.
But
When you brought up high ankle sprain, that's why I cringed when he said high ankle sprain, because, it might be 4 or 5 weeks.
Right. It's
Or
a
it might be
lingering-
8 or 9
it's a
weeks. And
lingering
it's
injury.
one of those things where, oops, I tweaked it. Oh, I thought I was close and I tweaked it. And it's almost back to the starting point. So to your point, and I'm gonna look at this both ways. I know depending on what point in time in the season. Do you have faith that Hendon Hooker could go 4-4, 5-3
Yes.
with
Yeah.
what he has at his disposal?
I do.
And
I
it-
believe 4.
Then
if
why
I-
go pick up Tannehill?
exactly. Why did you draft the kid?
Why do it?
I mean, eventually you got to throw him out there and just see what he has if that situation comes. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not risking it on a guy that's not even going to come in and help this organization. Like I said, with Teddy Bridgewater, at least he was a good backup to Jared Goff. He helped J-Mo mature in a way. Like, I'm not sure if Ryan Tannehill is going to come in and be that guy for this team.
You go 5-3 in this make-believe scenario. You go 5-3 with Jared Goff out. You go 7-2. Even, how about, just for the sake of an argument, 6-3 with Jared Goff in?
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about 11 wins right there. And
Right,
I'm all
right.
about just get in the gosh damn playoffs. Like, now that you won the division, of course I want to win the division. Of course. I want more home games. Hell, I want the number 1 seed. Just get in the playoffs with what they have at their disposal, and I think this team has a damn good chance.
Yeah.
Regardless of the road. I firmly believe that.
I just like Hendon Hooker's ability better too. He's a dual threat quarterback with an offensive mind like Ben Johnson. That adds a whole nother wrinkle to defenses they have to account for.
Sure.
Ryan Tannehill is a statue. We all know that. Like I said, he's a poor man's Jared Goff. If they get to teeing off on him, he's gonna shrivel. He is.
I think calling him a statue is a little bit insulting.
Come on now. He ain't
At
no
this
Hendon
point
Hooker,
in his
though.
career, he isn't the guy he was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Sure,
Does
but
he used to move a little bit. Now he's more, how about this? Statuesque?
well,
Good.
he was a
Good, I like
college
that.
wide receiver before he was a quarterback. That's all.
get
That's
it,
all I'm
but
gonna say.
100. But he used to move a lot.
But
That's
is
fair.
an
he
NFL
doesn't move as much anymore.
right? Is the NFL defense going to be like, oh, we have to account for Ryan Tannehill's legs? No.
Probably not at this point. Probably not at this point. And for the record, I'm not pounding the table saying sign Ryan Tannehill. It's just one of those things where when you first hear about it, you almost just your split reaction is just like Tannehill, no. And then I thought about it a little bit, and here's the thing, Sean, and this is just my opinion. If Jared Goff were to go down for 8 weeks, you said the hypothetical 4-4. I don't know if 4-4 is necessarily good enough. I think somebody like Ryan Tannehill could maybe make you 5-3 or 6-2, and that could be the difference between a 1 seed and a 2 seed and a 3 seed.
So you
Go
willing to
ahead.
pay $10 million for Ryan Tannehill? Because that's how much it would cost.
Maybe for a year, maybe for 1 year.
Well, of course he'll be 1 year, but I'm just for that 1 year you willing to pull up $10 million when they can. Maybe somebody comes across during the trade deadline that you want, but you can't do it because you pay Ryan Tannehill $10 million.
In a perfect world, I've already given you mine. I would trade a 7th rounder for Taylor Heineke for 4.5.
Yeah, and I would have loved that too.